It's a little bit before 8 a.m. I'm in Corvallis. I'm waiting for the Flix bus. And autumn has started. And it's not raining right now, but it might rain today. And I'm going on a trip. Just got off that Flix bus. I'm in Salem today, and I'm actually waiting for a local or regional bus. And while I wait for that, I might walk around, probably split that off into a separate video. So here I am, Chariots Transit Center, Salem, Oregon. And that bus right there, the 30X, is the bus I'm about to take. And it's going to be a lot like I did all of 5 days ago in Eugene, where this bus goes up into a river valley, but not quite as far. This is Stayton, Oregon. This is what I came to see. Took about 50 minutes on the regional bus to get here. We passed through Turner and Aumsville. I showed little flashes of that. But the main thing we're going to see is Stayton. I haven't been here since 2009, so it will be interesting to see what is here. So I did get off the bus at the edge of town. This is not representative of all of Stayton. So here we're passing by the Safeway. There's a Wilco farm store. So big box, little box, medium box. We do have this side of town, but we're walking towards downtown. Okay, so I lied about that because I have to turn around and find myself some Mexican food. Actually, I got off the bus right across from the Muchas Gracias and I just didn't notice it. I need a burrito because I'm cold and I need to warm up. You see this red barn? That is an antique store, at least it was an antique store. And I remember back in the 90s as a young hip-hop fan, you know, living near here, I found a cassette tape from Cool G Rap in there because it's an antique store and they had some cassette tapes. And that story is more relevant than it might seem at first. But also I just wanted to throw that in there. So there is a Dollar Tree. I might catch it I might check it out later. One interesting thing, when we moved here in the late 80s, that was the Safeway. Some of you might be able to recognize the pattern. Either that was or that was, but this little plaza had a Safeway. And one of the things that happened in this city in the mid-90s, like a lot of cities in the Willamette Valley, is it got boxified, but currently there's about 8,000 people living in Stayton, and it never got big boxified, but there was a lot of chains that moved in the 90s, and there is an old downtown, we'll be going there soon, but like a lot of places in the Willamette Valley, this has changed at least a little from when I first came here in 1988, I think. But also, Thai, pho, teriyaki. That was also not here in the 80s. So, along with the chains, there's also a lot of small local businesses, especially a lot of culinary diversity, I would say. This is the Stayton Public Library. It's a pretty big building for a city of 8,000 people, and it's right by this nice, peaceful little creek. Interesting thing, I also remember when we came here in 1988, my mom moved us here from the Battleground area, and I remember like my first visits to Stayton, I was probably like 9 years old, and I remember the library was like this little cramped, maybe it was even a house just full of books. And then sometime in the early 90s they got the capital together to build this, but to me it's still the new library. And at the time, I'd only seen a small portion of the world. I'd really only been up and down the I-5 corridor. This was the furthest south I'd ever been. And so Stayton was kind of like my city of Battleground, but to me at the time it seemed very different. But in retrospect, this is a lot like the city I came from. Battleground has actually gotten substantially bigger. It is like sextupled in population since I was a kid. On the other hand, Stayton has gotten a little bit bigger, but not a lot bigger. But when I first came here, it did seem different. Especially it did have a larger downtown, because even going back to World War II, Stayton was a more substantial city comparatively than it is today. And as you can see from right here, it's a nice city with a lot of facilities. And one thing on this particular trip is I've seen a lot more of Oregon in the past couple years, and so those new impressions and that new knowledge of what the Willamette Valley looks like in general is kind of warring with a lot of my childhood impressions, sometimes which were a little bit unhappy or at least tense of like coming to a new place. So I'm kind of seeing this as a Nectar's Cube right now. And more simply, I was looking up because I was curious what this creek was, and actually, so this creek branches off from the Santiam River, which is not natural. This is a canal, or at least parts of it are a canal, and this actually leads from the Santiam River into Mill Creek, which we've seen in Salem. And I don't actually know the story of why this was created, whether this was an irrigation canal, too small for transport, but it does make a nice little it does make a nice little scenic creek next to this path. And speaking of the Santiam River, that is one of the places I'm going to go next. So this library was dedicated March 1990, but in my mind this is still the new library, even though it's existed here for 33 years and the old library only saw it for like 1 year. So the librarians, whose job it is to know things, told me that this is called the Salem Ditch, and I responded, that's not very romantic. And then they said, or one of them said, we should ditch that name. There's your pun for the day. And it is artificial. It connects the Santiam to the Mill Creek. Still curious about the reason for that. So as you can see, we do have an old downtown full of two-story brick buildings. And this was also something that was surprising to me a long time ago when I came here, because this Stayton was a larger city at one point, and it would be interesting to know the history of Stayton. I'm going to assume that it's a lot like Silverton, which is about 10 miles to the north of here, and a lot of other cities in the region where it started off as a natural resources hub and was booming at the time and then kind of went into decline, and now it's kind of reinvigorating itself as a residential suburb and also maybe a tourist town a little, not to the extent of Silverton. The twin pillars of an economy, Pokemon and weed. There's also a record store, so this counts as a city. One thing to say about that, and I think I've talked about this in other places, is, well, for one thing, okay, the bus that I took here only comes 4 times a day, and that's relevant because as far as like being integrated with larger communities and stuff, there's not a lot of services here, not a lot of jobs. Okay, let me rephrase that. I think like in a lot of towns like this, between 5,000 and 20,000 people, your jobs are pretty much going to be retail and then for like a few professional services. But I think in a city of this size, a lot of people, you know, they graduate college and either you stay on and get a retail job or you move to Portland, Salem, or Eugene, or out into the wider world. And that's why, you know, when I was talking about the Cool G rap tape, that's relevant because a lot of kids, you know, a city like this, you have enough exposure to stuff that you want more and you want to leave. And, you know, a lot of times cities like this that try to recreate themselves as, you know, tourist cities and nice little facilities, and there's a lot of dining options. But what is that really going to do effectively, you know, for people who want to move on in their career, experience some more things? So a lot of that tourist stuff is kind of skin deep, and it can't really keep the city growing. And I think that the city has grown, but I think a lot of that is older people coming back to a small town for retirement, or you know, people raising families, stuff like that. But the industry, the base of diverse jobs and stuff, and the base of housing, you know, you've seen mostly single-family housing, some apartments like that. It hasn't grown enough to keep that population developing, in my mind. And that's not that there's anything wrong with Stayton, but I think that's why cities like this are kind of stuck in the middle. So I'm not sure, but a lot of the houses in this area look like they could probably date from 1880s to 1920s. And there are some more modern areas of the city, but here it does look like we're late 19th century, early 20th century neighborhood. Also, in case anybody's keeping track, this is all in logic for me. I have walked here, and walked here in a way that ties in with my network. July 28th, 1995, I walked about 15 miles from my house to here. I was 16 and had a lot of energy. And earlier I was talking about being in the middle. In the past couple years, I've made a couple of visits to these like small eastern Willamette Valley towns, whether it's somewhere right on the freeway like Woodburn, or a smaller town like Sweet Home. But I haven't really, because to me, if I want to go somewhere, I kind of want to go to either a big city or a really unique small town, preferably on the coast. So it just hasn't been a priority, even though there is a lot to see here, as we can see in this park, and as we will see up ahead. So this is the Jordan Covered Bridge here in Stayton. Has an interesting history. This was actually originally, well, this wasn't. Another covered bridge was built in Lynn County, moved here, and then it burnt down and was rebuilt. So this is a recreation in a separate place of another bridge. You kind of get into a ship of Theseus paradox there. And like a lot of covered bridges, such as the one in Sweet Home, you can see it doesn't really connect anything at this point. Well, it connects a footpath, but it's mostly here to preserve the architecture, which is a nice thing. I mean, who doesn't like a covered bridge? What's wrong with you, dude? So this path should leave somewhere. It could be, it looks like we have a fence here, that part of the park is closed past here, which is unfortunate. I wanted to see that part of the park. So somewhere around here, it's kind of, there's a lot of squiggly lines. This is where, somewhere close to here, is where a branch of the Santiam River, the North Fork of the Santiam River, becomes the Salem Ditch. And I actually never really knew that before, so I learned something new today. Well, there's some information. It dates back to 1855. There has to be a story there. One that I will just have to leave people wondering at. So this gives more information intended to power industry. So they cut a canal that went downward to power water wheels and whatnot. And what's also interesting for me, like I said, I lived here for many years and have walked over this ditch and by it all the time. Never really thought about its history. I guess maybe that's part of getting older. You start wondering about details of things like this. So we did find another park, Riverfront Park. Second Riverfront Park we've been to today. Probably both because they're named after earlier settler Amos Riverfront. Anyway, we are crossing, again, what looks like a canal, some form of canal of the Santiam River. And I don't know if this was here when I was a kid and I just didn't know, or if this is in replacement for the Jordan Bridge Park access. Anyway, I'm just going to walk along the river for a while. Still have maybe half my battery, so just going to see more of the Santiam River. And I'm feeling a little bit more peaceful now, getting away from the traffic and stuff of Stayton. So let's just walk down by the river. Oh no, now 1/4 bar. Hopefully more than that. Another reason for me personally why I took this trip today, even though I only have 3 full days in Oregon after this, or in my house after this. When I moved to Portland for the first time as an 18-year-old, moved into the Civic Apartments, which you could get for $400 and a handshake in 1997, I spent the day before, you know, when I was a little bit trepidatious, I spent the day in Stayton. I drove here, and I remember walking around town singing parts of 36 Chambers to myself. Uh-oh, X, X, X. So my battery is running out. In fact, it went to X, and now it went back to 1 bar. Sad thing is, I actually have 4 backup batteries that I forgot to post. If that does happen, I'll just record with my cell phone, which can't zoom as well, but actually does have sharper pictures. So it won't be the end of the world, and it might make the video seem weird, but it'll actually just be like a Wizard of Oz thing. We're switching to sharp picture and clear color now. As mentioned, I've switched to my Pixel camera. Also, as mentioned, I assume this is one of the gates that's controlling the flow of the water along the different channels of the Santiam and into the Salem ditch. It's interesting that when I was a child and a teenager, I never really thought about that much. So it's interesting to see this now. Yeah, no jumping, swimming, or other water activity allowed in the Stayton ditch. You don't have to tell me. So this is the Stayton ditch, not the Salem ditch. So there's like an entire infrastructure of water transfer around here. And it looks like we have a barbed wire fence ahead of there, so I'm going to walk in this direction. So we've reached the end of the trail. There's the trail. Here's the Santiam River, a part of it. And according to the map, that over there is an island, but it's hard to see because there's all these ditches and branches of Santiam that are like forking around and maybe finding out. And so in any case, it looks like you can see a trail over there, and there might be times of the year where you could actually like cross this river, but not today. So I'm going to turn around here, but this kind of shows that, you know, we were passing through some scrappy land, but the Santiam is a nice river through here. Well, it's about time to leave the park. This park has great natural access. You don't have the river. As you can see, like I said, about a lot of parks, you have a lot of non-native invasive species. It's kind of what I call scrappy. Not terrible, but you know, you have this gravel path. You have a lot of invasive species. And not complaining too much, but I think this park is still in the process of being kind of reconstructed or restored from what I assume was industrial uses. I also use like 10% of my battery on an Epic Freestyle, so I'm gonna have to plug this right in, and for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm probably gonna be seeing stuff I've seen before, because I'm walking back through town. Also, hopefully it's not too jerky. I don't remember these shacks or sheds being here on the way in, so I might have taken a different route, and hopefully I haven't taken myself too off course. I still have over 2 hours until the bus comes. I had a lot of time today, and I've spent like 2 hours here, so I'm only halfway through my trip, so I am not in a hurry. So I don't know for certain, but this looks like it's restorative work. They're clearing away underbrush, maybe to restore habitat, or maybe just to make it more safe. You know, you want to prevent brush fire territory. And I did leave on a different road than I came in on, but if you can see right ahead, there is a gate. There's the road, so I'm back to where I want to be, more or less. And this bridge out of town, that crosses the Santiam, and on the other side is Lynn County, same county as Albany. And if I had about 8 hours, I could walk there. But for now, I'm gonna go back to town. As you can see, we're on a highway, so there is no sidewalk, but that should be there soon as we go back into town proper. This is apparently the Brown House. It's colored kind of an off cream and blue, named after, in this case really is named after a settler named Brown. And this is just an example of the type of building that you can see here in Stayton. And across that street, for example, you can see a house basically the same period, a little bit more modest. And this house is a lot more fancy. Look at that wraparound porch, those little mini turrets, that widow's walk, a lot of architectural features. And so I think a lot of this stuff, just like in Silverton, was built when there was not exactly timber barons, but there was early settlers who made a lot of money off of resources and could build pretty nice houses. The Bush House in Salem is another example of that in this area. So sprinkled around this city, along with, a lot of houses from other eras, there are things like this. And I just stopped and looked at that, and then I'm walking back towards town. So as you can see, it's artifacted for you, not for me. There's ceviche here, authentic Mexican food. Didn't know they had ceviche in Mexico, but I guess they do. Also, I did stop at the Dollar Tree, and the Dollar Tree was pretty cool. Friendly people, good snack selection, no books, or just coloring books for kids. That's kind of disappointing, even though right now I do not need more books. It's the opposite of what I need. So that's an update about Stayton. I still have an hour until my bus comes, so I'm going to go into Safeway because I want to get a big old slab of chocolate cake. I'm going to pretend today's my birthday. And they know why I'm here, don't they? So I ate my chocolate cake, kind of left town. I still have another 50 minutes, so I'm still walking a little bit. You can see here, close to the highway interchange was the state highway. We have kind of, I don't know what to call places like where you have a Verizon store, credit union, little box, micro box. You have like a highway type retail area, but no big box stores here. So, and this was all built also relatively recently when I was a teenager and later. And if you see here, we have more housing. Yay, housing. Any type, any income level, as long as we have some housing, it hopefully reduces burden on the entire system. The thing about that, and I talked about that in other places like Junction City, is you build what looks to be medium density, median income housing, and for a certain level that's okay, and then it's like, well, where are these people going to work, go to school and stuff, because it is still 15 miles west down that highway to Salem. So, at a certain level it's good, and then you have to think, well, what other facilities do we need to build to accommodate all the people who are living in this housing? But I'm just a guy for a walk. I don't have to solve all those problems right now. So on Google Maps, they said there was a trail system here, and sometimes that can be a little bit dubious, but in this case, we actually do have a trail system and a pretty nice natural park. At this point, I'm too tired to appreciate it, getting short on time. This development does look like it's a modern housing development, but it's using some good concepts such as, you have park, you have green space, and it's close to at least some retail that I passed by in that area. So perhaps not the most sparkling example of urbanism, but it is done with some thought, I can tell. So one thing I didn't mention, because it was obvious to me, Stayton is also the last town that's really a suburb east of Salem. After that, you start getting to the mountains, and none of the cities east of here are big enough to even have a grocery store, really for 50 or 60 miles until you get to Bend. And so this city, Stayton, might seem small compared to some things, but actually, for what it is, for people coming from the east, this is like the first big city they come to. So that ends my little sojourn in this area. And I've spent a lot of time today, and there's still more to see. And of course, I can't see every neighborhood. Also, I have 40 minutes before the bus comes, and it probably only takes 10 minutes to walk back to the station, but it's enough that I couldn't relax walking around more. But this gives another sight to what we've seen. So we've really seen different eras of this town as we've walked around. Oh, you who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Phlebas, who was once as tall and handsome as you. Interesting thing about this trip, last year the summer stayed late. This year came a little bit early, and it's kind of a little bit more dismal than it should be just in September. And so I think I'm feeling a little bit dismal today, even though this trip was a goal of mine. And also I'm leaving. And there's a lot of things I could have seen in my last week here. And for whatever reason, Stayton, town I knew as a kid, provided a piece of that piece of the picture, even though, I mean, for a lot of people, suburban sidewalk through housing development, maybe that's not what you want to see, but hopefully it's been informative and stuff, and kind of getting tired. Don't know what else I have to say. I hope this video doesn't go too long. Excuse me, I was dreaming while I wrote it. And I might make a comment or two when I get to Salem and Albany, because I still have a ways to go back. But for now, this is a piece of the story. This is a piece of the story. There's the bus on the other side. So it's going to make its run through town and then come back to the shelter, I hope. So I just got off that bus at the transit center in Salem, and from here I'm going to walk to the train station, the Amtrak station. Might not take the most direct route to get there because I have an hour. So according to this sign, if you can read through the artifacting, my bus is on time, which actually just means I will be waiting for longer in Albany, well past dark, but that's kind of part of the game this late in the year. So today I went somewhere and I saw some things, and then I included some other things that maybe will be less relevant, you know, the journey to and from Stayton, and here I'm sitting on a train platform. But for me, the journey is a unity, not just, you know, the city itself. And I'll have some final thoughts in Albany, even though at this point, yeah, I'm getting pretty tired. And who knows who is still watching at this point. Since this is my last trip for a while in Oregon, I kind of wanted to include more than I normally would. So thank you for bearing with me. Here we are. Here's the Amtrak bus. Pretty quick trip it should be. So I just got off that point bus here in Albany. So today I took a lot of different forms of buses. I took a Flix bus in the morning. Then I took the regional bus to Stayton, my main destination. And Then I took an Amtrak point bus from Salem to Albany, and actually it's probably going to be an hour, I've talked about this before, I'm taking the Lynn Benton Loop bus back home. By then it will be totally dark. At least it's clear and not rainy right now. So one thing, this is going to be my final trip as far as I know, like this before I move to Costa Rica. So one thing about this is all of these trips have been really about seeing how the communities of the Willamette Valley hang together. And as you can see, through this fraction in transportation and stuff, it takes a while to get from one place to another. And one thing that people could respond is, well, if you have a car, it's not that far. Of course, people with cars, they don't really have a reason to go from Corvallis to Stayton. For me, it's kind of the... Okay, that's not the one I came on. That's the one going north. Or east or west or something. It is, in various ways, I guess I've come to the realization that even though those communities are pretty close geographically, there's kind of a division between them. And, what I've done is try to kind of see the unity there. And also just on a practical standpoint, I think that there should be some type of unified transportation plan for the Willamette Valley, both for practical reasons and because unity. I don't, whatever that means. And, in the coming years or whatever, we will see how the community develops as demographics, climate change, resource ability changes. But all of that's pretty heavy, and gosh, these videos on my phone are going to be long. It's going to take a while to render all of this. Also, hey man, remember to pack your extra batteries. It's not the end of the world if you don't. Well, with that all being said, and I could say so much more about my time here and about the trip today, what it means to me, past and present, but this is going to be a long video. Anyway, I'm just going to wait for that bus. There's the last Amtrak Cascades of the night going by. Could have waited a little bit while and taken a train instead of the bus, and it would have been here on time, but I didn't take the risk. That's a lot of cars today. It's a lot of cars for an Amtrak Cascades. I'm still waiting for my bus.